He walked into that courtroom the way certain people walk into every room, like the rules were written for someone else. Shoulders rolled forward, chin lifted at an angle that read less as confidence and more as a dare, a smirk already in position before he had even looked at the bench. The gallery clocked him immediately. The clerk clocked him. And Judge Frank Caprio, who has spent more than 3 decades watching people walk through that door and reading in the first 10 seconds everything they believe about themselves, clocked him most of all. What nobody in Courtroom 3 knew yet, what was sitting in a manila envelope on the prosecutor's table like a grenade with the pin already pulled, was that Tyler Mace had spent the 4 days between his arrest and this hearing making phone calls from a jail cell. And every single one of them had been recorded. Tyler Mace was 23 years old. He had the kind of angular, restless energy that fills a room without warming it. A black hoodie with the hood half up despite being indoors, sneakers that cost more than most people's rent, and the practiced indifference of someone who had decided at some point not too long ago that caring about consequences was for people who couldn't afford not to. He was appearing on charges of aggravated harassment and property destruction following an incident in which his neighbor's car windshield had been shattered and a series of threatening messages had been left on her doorstep over the course of 3 weeks. The neighbor, a woman named Sylvia Crane, sat on the other side of the aisle. 62 years old, retired librarian, a lavender cardigan and reading glasses on a beaded chain around her neck. She had brought a folder, the edges worn soft from how many times she had opened and closed it in the weeks since her windshield had gone. Before this goes any further, if you have ever watched someone underestimate the room they just walked into, drop a comment, because what is about to come out of that envelope is the reason this story exists. Subscribe now, because justice, when it finally shows its hand, tends not to give a second warning. The surface case was a harassment dispute. Tyler's public defender had prepared a defense built on reasonable doubt. No direct witnesses to the windshield, no fingerprints recovered, the messages left unsigned. It was, on paper, a defensible position. Tyler seemed to know this. He sat with one arm across the back of his chair and looked at the ceiling at intervals, as though the proceedings were something happening to someone nearby rather than to him specifically. Judge Caprio asked Sylvia to describe the incident. She stood carefully, both hands on the edge of the table, and spoke without theatrics and without hesitation. She described waking up at 6 in the morning to find her car destroyed in her own driveway. She described the notes, 7 of them, over 3 weeks, each one escalating, the last one specific enough about the layout of her home that she had stopped sleeping through the night. She described calling the police and then not knowing whether calling the police had made things better or worse. Her voice did not tremble, but the folder in her hands did, just slightly, and the gallery saw it. Tyler Mace, during this testimony, exhaled audibly through his nose. It was not quite a laugh. It was the sound a person makes when they want the room to know they find something beneath them, without technically crossing a line. Judge Caprio's eyes moved to him. Tyler looked at the ceiling. That's when the prosecutor stood up. She was a young woman named Dana Fitch, compact and deliberate in a dark blazer, and she placed the manila envelope on the edge of the bench with the careful placement of someone who has been waiting for exactly this moment. "Your Honor," she said, "the state would like to submit evidence obtained from recorded telephone calls made by the defendant during his pretrial detention." She paused just long enough. Mr. Mace was informed at the time of booking, in writing and verbally, that all calls from the facility are recorded and subject to review. Tyler Mace's arm came off the back of his chair. The recording was played through the courtroom speakers. A jail call, the automated voice first announcing the recording notice, then Tyler's voice, clear and unguarded and catastrophically specific. In 4 days of calls to 2 different numbers, Tyler had described exactly what he had done to Sylvia's car. He had described the notes, including details that had never been released publicly. He had laughed about it. He had referred to Sylvia by name and by a series of other names that made the court reporter's jaw tighten. And in the call made on the 3rd day, he had said with the breezy specificity of someone who did not believe in consequences, "They don't have anything on me. I'll go in there, play it cool, the old judge will feel sorry for me, and I'll walk. Watch." The courtroom went silent, not the held-breath silence of suspense, the heavy, airless silence of a room in which something has been fully and irrevocably exposed. Sylvia Crane's hands went still on her folder. A woman in the gallery put her hand over her mouth. The public defender looked at the table in front of him with the expression of a man reviewing everything he had been told by his client and understanding, in real time, the scale of what he had not been told. Tyler Mace stared straight ahead. The smirk was gone. In its place was something that was trying very hard to look like nothing. Judge Caprio let the silence hold for a long moment. Then he turned to Tyler with the full, undeflectable attention that is the most powerful thing Frank Caprio possesses. Not volume, not anger, but the absolute quality of being seen by someone who is not fooled. "You came in here today," Judge Caprio said, his voice carrying the particular quietness of something that is already decided, "with the plan of playing it cool. I know that because you told someone that on a recorded line after being informed it was recorded." He paused. "So let me tell you what I see instead of cool. I see a young man who terrorized a 62-year-old woman in her own home for 3 weeks, who thought it was something to laugh about, who looked at that woman sitting right there and exhaled through his nose like she wasn't worth the breath it would take to actually respond." He looked at Tyler steadily. "You said you thought I'd feel sorry for you. I want you to understand something. Compassion is not the same thing as blindness. I have given it to people in this courtroom who were struggling, who made mistakes, who came in here with real remorse and real hardship. I give it freely. But compassion is not a system you game. It is a response to truth. And you, Mr. Mace, did not bring truth into this room. You brought a performance, and the curtain just came down." Tyler was convicted on all charges: restitution to Sylvia Crane for the vehicle damage, a formal protective order, mandatory counseling, and a sentence that reflected not just the charges, but the conduct documented on the recordings, which the judge noted demonstrated premeditation, contempt for the victim, and deliberate manipulation of the judicial process. The calls were also forwarded to the facility's review board, as Tyler had made statements in them that suggested additional potential violations. Sylvia Crane replaced her windshield the week after the verdict. She told the victim's advocate, who followed up with her, that the thing she remembered most about the hearing was not the recording, not even the verdict. It was the moment Judge Caprio said her situation was worth the full weight of the law, and meant it. Tyler Mace, as of 6 months later, was completing his sentence. The calls he made from that jail cell, the ones he made while believing nothing could touch him, had touched everything. Some people walk into a courtroom thinking they already know how it ends. The ones who are wrong always have one thing in common: they forgot that the room was listening the whole time. Share this if you believe arrogance is just confidence without a foundation. Comment and tell me, what did you think the moment that recording started playing? Subscribe, because this channel is for Sylvia, for every person who brought their folder worn soft at the edges and trusted that someone in that room would take it seriously. Judge Caprio always does.